Welcome to the AG45 Soul Aligned Strategy Podcast, where business meets purpose, growth feels good, and results meet enjoyment. Hosted by Catherine Broyce, CEO and founder of AG45, this show is built on 30 years of hands-on experience across 4 countries, 3 businesses, and 1 incredible life raising 4 children. Catherine brings a rare whole-person perspective to business, strategy, and leadership. This podcast is for business owners ready to stop spinning, start aligning, and build a business that delivers real value while creating a life that actually feels like yours. At the end of the day, you are the engine behind it all. And when you're clear and aligned, everything moves with purpose. It starts with you. Let's dive in. Welcome, Claire Keys, to the AG45 Soul Aligned Strategy Podcast. It is really a pleasure to have you here, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation, and I know our listeners are as well. So I'm going to start off by letting you introduce yourself, what you want to share with everyone about you, but also about your business.
Okay, well, thank you for that wonderful introduction. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me. My name is Claire Keys. I'm the owner of CK Consulting, where we do marketing and advertising for businesses and brands as well. We do it mostly on the social media side, so YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. We're on all those socials. Our main goal is to help businesses just grow from first off social media and then as other marketing platforms as well and channels. We really try to engage everything within their business, but specifically social media first. We like to grow their pages because I think social media is a great opportunity now that I feel like a lot of businesses could miss out on or be scared because they don't know like what to do or how to post, when to post, all those things. So we just really try to help them understand the process, make it super easy, simple for them, so we can just help them out and grow from there. Yeah, I'm 19 years old. I've been doing this for going on 3 years now. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
That is awesome. I mean, first of all, like, wow, 19, 3 years as an entrepreneur, business owner. I think that in itself is like, you got the bug. You got the bug, which is, it's great. It's really great. So, and also the social media. I think you saw me like pointing when, you were talking about it because it is something that I am, it is something I don't feel very comfortable with, for sure. So
Okay.
we can definitely talk more because I love having a more youthful person in that aspect because you think about it in a much different way than I would, because one, I didn't grow up with it, and I don't understand it. And I also do love having a different generation's hat on things because there's so much, even though I may have been in the world longer than you, does not make me wiser. Now, maybe in some things, but not all. So we can all learn. So you and I are definitely going to talk when it comes to the social media. But I want to ask you before we get into, the business stuff. I mean, the soul aligned, this is really important to myself as the founder of AG45 and AG45 as a business. And listeners should know what we mean about soul aligned now. But how would you describe soul aligned and what impact has or does it have on you and your business when you are soul aligned versus when maybe there was a time you weren't?
Sure. I think soul aligned really comes back to your purpose as an individual and kind of you growing from there, because we can have one main purpose, but then you can have all these little branches of purpose. But I think soul aligned is really like who you are at the core aligning with what you do and how you interact with people, how you, talk to your, clients, customers. I think that is really soul aligned to me. Just being true to who you are when you're interacting and being. And then when you're in the business and you're soul aligned, for me specifically, I feel you just feel a lot lighter. You feel a lot more at peace. When you know you're on your path, it just
Mhm.
kind of feels right. And you will just feel a sense of peace and purpose that really, no matter what happens or what challenges come your way, they won't really bother you as much because you know that you're still on the right path and you're still aligned and you're still doing what you need to be doing. And then when you're not soul aligned, it's going to be the polar opposite. It's going to be when you're in these challenges, you're going to kind of feel like, oh, why am I doing this? What's the point of this? If you lose your sense of self or lose your sense of purpose within your business, you can kind of get down on yourself and then on your business. And then the human mind, I mean, it'll just go wild if you let it. It can go to endless possibilities of negativities if you let it, which is why it's so important to be soul aligned. Because when you're not, it's just kind of like a train wreck, to be honest. And you feel
Oh
it
yeah.
within yourself as well. When
Yes,
you're not.
and I can add to that in the sense. So one thing I can say is that even the decisions you make years ago. So I'm still paying for some of the decisions I made 20 years ago and still like trying to get out of that. So at that time, I wasn't very soul aligned. And the decisions you make, if you are misaligned, your decisions are going to be misaligned and the actions are going to be misaligned. And so, you know, and for 19 for you to actually, and again, I'm not saying this in a patronizing way, so please don't take it this way at all.
Don't worry.
I never would have, I don't think, been speaking as wisely as you are at 19. I wish I did, but you could not have described Soul Line any better than me in terms of how we see it. And so yeah, so I just want to say, like, right on, like as you're talking, I'm like, yes, like she gets it.
Well, good.
Now, in terms of like when you have, is there a time where you were misaligned that you're willing to share, in terms of the impact of that? If not, it's all good.
Yeah, I would say that there was a time where was totally misaligned, and it had to do with totally outside factors. My best friend was going through things, and I kind of let that take over me in a sense, and I didn't really, when you stop seeing the bigger picture of things, sometimes it can really, like I said, it can really mess with your mind. And for a couple months there, I was misaligned, and my business was really, it really takes the hit because you're the CEO or owner, whatever, but you're really the leader and you're the cornerstone and you're the foundation of the business. So it's like if you start cracking and crumbling, it's like everything else is going to, I was coming, meetings were late, schedulings were off, like everything was totally like helter skelter, I'd like to say, because I wasn't really aligned and I was just going through the motions. But my heart and my soul wasn't in it because while I was there, I wasn't really there because I was thinking of everything my best friend was going through and okay, how can I help her? And so I think that while my heart was in the right place for wanting that for her, I still, can see like when I got back on track, I was like, okay, there's a way to do this while still being aligned with myself and my business and still being able to help her, but being able to separate that, from the business so that I can be who I need to be and show up for my clients, my team, all those other people counting on me as well.
Yeah, and it's And I love that you said, your intention, like it wasn't that you were doing anything wrong. Like you were trying to help someone and support somebody. And I have found before that I've been in that position too. And sometimes we can get a little bit sucked in and we can lose ourselves. And I love that you actually had said that earlier, that if you're not soul aligned and you lose yourself, the impact of that is huge. And I did go through a period in my life where, and I'm not going to go into the details because that's not what this is about, but it was, I absolutely lost my sense of self, and it is horrible. And then to be able to come back and find that again, it is the most freeing thing. And it's like life seems to flow, even though there's still hard times. It's not like it's like, oh, I'm just, having a blast all the
Yeah.
time. But there is a freedom showing up, and being aligned to who you are and what you want. And and then everything in your life, um, aligning to that as well.
Yeah.
So, Claire, in terms of your business, tell us a little bit more. I would love to hear like a time in your business, where maybe you maybe made the wrong decision, or it was a little bit hard and it was a great learning experience, but at the time it might have been like, oh my God, this is really hard. Would you mind sharing, a time where you went through something like that?
Sure. So, being a business owner, it's great. I get to work with all different types of people doing marketing. Um, and so, but I do have a story where I worked with a music artist, and they were up and coming, and they wanted to. The music artists, they're great. Don't get me wrong. They're wonderful. They're creative. They're in their element when they're making music. But specifically when it came to marketing, this individual didn't really like, they had their own kind of vision, and they're like, okay, well, I want to do things this way, but the way they wanted to do things wasn't really aligned with how they wanted their page to look, if that makes sense, or just how they wanted to present themselves. So I'm like offering ideas and suggestions, and I'm like, okay, because it's kind of hard with music artists. You kind of have to know when to take a step back and not, because they're also in a creative space, and so you don't want to interrupt their flow. So, I'm trying to offer creative suggestions while also being, friendly and nice about it, because I don't want to give them the wrong idea and be like, okay, well, it's my way or the highway. But, I'm like, okay, well, if we do this, this will work better than this. Um, Long story short, they kind of wanted to go their own way. So we ended up actually parting ways. And unfortunately, since we have left, they haven't really grown that much on their social media presence. So just as a human being, that makes me sad that we couldn't work together. And obviously, while I was in there, it's a little bit frustrating because you get to know the person, you're like, wow, this person's great, but it's like, because they're a music artist, and not to knock all the music artists out there, because I'm sure there are people who are not like this, and maybe it was just that individual. But again, great individual, they just, when it came to executing, they really didn't know what to do with their page. And so when I was trying to direct them, and they didn't really want to, it felt like, and maybe it was how I was coming off, and that's what I tried to reflect on later, was, well, maybe I was coming off to them as another teacher or another professor, or something in that aspect, to where, because they're a music artist, maybe they're thinking I'm just acting like another authoritative figure in their life, that they don't want to, and they just want to do their own thing.
Another
So
stiff or something.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. So reflecting back on that later, I'm thinking it could have been a mixture of my actions and their personality, but that was definitely something to overcome, as far as internally. It was kind of like I kind of struggled for a little bit with thinking like, okay, well, is it me, just trying to figure out like what went wrong, or, where I could have really done better, to be honest, just moving forward.
That's also can be really the hard thing about being an entrepreneur. And see, here's one of the differences. And I'm not saying one is, better than the other, but I do see a difference that there's a business owner and there's an entrepreneur. Now, you can be a business owner and an entrepreneur, for sure. But I don't think all business owners are necessarily entrepreneurs. And the way I see entrepreneurs is it's kind of like it's in their bones. It's just you were meant to build, you were meant to create. It's kind of like a calling, and it's visionary. They might be a bit more squirrel, and like it's like come back to here. But I think too that potentially that entrepreneurs can take things to heart, especially if it's around the service, especially if the business is more of a service industry, that we can personalize it a little bit more. Again, I'm generalizing, and I'm not. This is my take on something. I could be so wrong, but I've been there before, and I can hear like you're kind of introspectively. Was it me? What did I do? Like, and
Yeah.
that can be really hard because you're also a creative in terms of what you do. That's how I see it in terms of what you
Yeah,
do.
100%.
And so that creative, you're putting yourself out there and your team's putting themselves out there in terms of what you create. So yeah, I think it would be hard to separate that. I don't know. Is that something maybe you are learning in the journey, or I don't
It's definitely been a learn in progress. Yeah, definitely.
So in terms of the musician and anyone who's a musician out there, Claire has nothing against musicians. She's already said that
Love
she
them. I used
loves.
to make music too, okay?
So is there something about that experience? Like, what would you say for you was the number one key learning from that?
I think honestly is that one was to make sure that when I come across maybe as most personable as I can, and just really come down and make sure they feel like I'm a human connecting with another human when I'm talking to them, so they don't feel if they did feel. Unfortunately, again, I didn't get to have that other conversation with them where I could have been like, "Hey, did I make you feel some type of way?" You know what I mean? In that aspect, but in retrospect, also just not taking it as personal. I would say part of who I am will probably always take things a little bit personal, you know, but just learning how to separate that from the business and be like, it's okay. Sometimes it's just not going to work, and that's okay. And everything happens for a reason, and I believe that, truly in my heart. So I believe that we were separated, for a reason, and perhaps maybe further down the line, if we'd have continued a client relationship with them, things could have gotten worse and escalated, and maybe I would not have been equipped to handle that situation then. So I think, yeah, just not taking it as personal and just making sure that they feel that I'm being real and genuine, even though I could be like, I'm genuine and me all the time, what do you mean, but someone else, like, not knowing as much of me or ever interacting with me before may not know that, or just a couple months in, they're not going to know everything about me and how I respond to things, and so they might not understand that. So I would say those would be the two biggest things that I took away from that situation.
Yeah, cool. It's interesting as listening to you, what just came to my mind is like, not everything is as it seems. And it may had nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
Maybe they ran out of money or I don't know. But
Yeah.
sometimes like we always look at ourselves first and we think like, but maybe it had nothing to do with that. And I love that perspective too of everything happens for a reason. And sometimes like when it appears that it's bad, and I put bad in quotes because what
Right.
really is bad? Like, you know,
The perspective.
absolutely. And like at the time, it's not to say that there aren't times where it's like, this is really hard and you might wish not to be going through it. But when you look back on it, you go back and you're like, wow, I'm so grateful that happened because, this came from it or that came from it. And so
Absolutely.
perspective.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting thing, and our human mind can really mess with
Yeah.
can really mess with that.
Yeah. I think, yeah, 100%. I think that's why it's so important too, just as an individual, in a business, whatever, making sure that you are training your mind to try to always see a situation as positive in the long run. It's like you said, things can be hard and difficult, but I think so many people find it hard to distinguish between hard and bad. Like they'll put
Mhm.
hard and bad and be like, okay, this is, hard, so it's bad. But that's not necessarily true, because bigger picture, like for example, someone could look at me getting emancipated at 16, right? And then moving out on my own, someone could be like, oh, that's so terrible. That's one of the worst things that could have ever happened to you. But for me, I'm like, that's one of the best things that ever happened to me. You know what I mean? It's all about perspective because, it I wouldn't be where I'm at today if, that wouldn't have happened. It was all part of the plan. It was all part of my purpose, So I think just keeping that bigger picture will maybe help people
Yeah.
discern a little bit better between, being so quick to label something hard or challenging as bad, like right away, or negative, you know?
Well, and that's so, and what you just described to me is, I think, the difference between doing something that is aligned, soul aligned, versus something it isn't. So, when you are soul aligned, it doesn't mean that things aren't hard, that there aren't challenges, but it's not like miserable and hard. It's not bad. It doesn't feel, I use this example in some of the other podcasts. So people, if they're listening to several, might be like, oh, Catherine, stop with this example. But it's like, life to me is like an ocean, and you're swimming in an ocean, and an ocean is ever changing. So is life. And sometimes it could be really smooth and beautiful and great, and sometimes it could be scary because you don't know what kind of creatures are lurking, beneath, and sometimes you get hit with a tsunami out of nowhere. But when you know who you are and you have confidence you can swim it, and you know where you're going, so you know the island, and you've got some, support along the way, so you might have a life raft or a boat or whatever, the challenges that the ocean throws at you, you can get through it and maybe even enjoy it. But when it's hard and like feels bad or resistance, that for me, it's like you've got anchors tied to you, and those anchors are either pulling you back as you're trying to swim, and or they're pulling you down trying to pull you under. And so it's like when you release that, and become more aligned, it's the hard doesn't feel bad. I don't know. That's
Yeah.
kind of how, I don't know what you were saying, what I was kind of hearing, and maybe I don't know.
No, you're 100% right. You're right, because when you're aligned and you know your purpose clearly, that's not saying we're all perfect and we're gonna be able to see the bigger picture every single time, and we're always gonna be like, great, great,
Yeah.
this is happening, let's go. It's not always gonna be like that. That's not
Yeah.
it at all. But it's just, when you have that purpose, like in the back of your mind subconsciously, you
Yeah.
can be like, okay, I can let myself be upset for 5 minutes a day, whatever about this, but then I'm going to move on, and just making sure that you stay on top of yourself with that. 100%. You're 100% right.
Man, your wisdom is I want to be like, thank you. Like it's inspiring. It really is. Um and yeah, I would love to have you definitely on again, Claire. Um I have a question for you, or something that or maybe a request. So you're younger than me, and you should be very proud of that. You've got like I wish sometimes I look at it and go, oh my God, how am I what age I am? Um, but for um, your generation, and for any of them who are listening, um, or youth, people who are starting out in the career, if there is one piece of advice for them, and this hate could be applicable to any age, so maybe it's not even just the young generation, but what would it be? Like, what is something that if they could grab onto or even hear a little bit of, it could really make a difference in their life?
Well, I would say that honestly, there's so much, but I feel like the biggest thing for me was just confidence, like find yourself first and then kind of go from there. Not that you can't start things while you're finding yourself, but I think finding yourself, knowing who you are, and then having the confidence to be like, okay, this is who I am, this is what I do, and just going from there. And being younger, you're gonna get some pushback from some older people. Not that everyone's like that, but
Yeah.
a lot of the times older people, especially like if you still work like a job or something like that, you're in a job, a lot of the older people have a limited mindset, and they have a fixed mindset, they don't really have a growth mindset. So it's just kind of knowing who to listen to for information. Not that you shouldn't, of course, you should always respect, your elder folk and listen to them. But kind of filter, I would say, kind of look at who's telling you what they're telling you and kind of be like, does this align with who they even are? Do you know what I mean? Does their life speak what they're telling to you? And kind of knowing what to filter and who to ask advice from. You're not going to ask advice from, let's say you want to start a car detailing business. You're not going to go to, a clothing owner and be like, hi, how do I, you know what I mean? Just kind of knowing who to go to. But again, I think it all comes back to having confidence in yourself, because if you don't have confidence and if you don't feel like, okay, this is what I want to do, this is what I'm going to get at it, confidence and a work ethic will take you, really long ways if you have your goals and you have your vision. So then after that, I would say just making your plan. You always, make your 5 year, make your, write these goals down, make it short term, make it long term, whatever works best for you. But have these goals, have plans. Don't just let life happen to you, happen to life. You know what I mean? I feel like we only are guaranteed one life on this earth. So it's like, why wouldn't you want to reach your fullest potential? Why wouldn't you want to be everything you want to be or dreamed of? Why wouldn't you want to try, and risk it? You're never really gonna, if you're trying, you're never gonna really fail. You're either gonna win or you're gonna learn, and just kind of having that mindset, reading books, talking to people, just, whatever industry you want to go into or whatever you want to do, talking to people in that industry, asking for advice. There's nothing wrong with that. Whether you're, 19 or 30, you can 50, you can still ask for advice. Um,
And I would say everything that you're describing is soul aligned. Like like searching for, like, when you can align with you, you're going to win or you're going to learn. Like, there is no, like, it is. And I love that you said, we've got one life, at least in this, body. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe I've got a parallel me running around somewhere, and who knows what I was before and who I'm going to be before,
Yeah.
but I know, like, as Catherine Broyce, this is it for me in this right here, right now. So why are we waste so much time and energy and effort on things that really don't matter and don't and are misaligned, so many of us. And so that growth mindset and those things, like, actually everything you said, Claire, it could really, like, resonate. And even the older folk, I was sitting there as you were saying that, I was like, I wonder if she's putting me in the older folk bucket. Or is she thinking, no, she's the growth mindset, like, cool older person?
No, just generalizing. I'm sure you're not that old.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it, Claire. I think the advice that you gave is great for actually any age. And I think a lot of people in all the generations could grab onto it for sure. And I think the one piece I'd add too is seeking advice from within too. Like, the more aligned you are with you, you know what to do. Like maybe not necessarily in like you might not have the acumen in terms or the knowledge or the skills how to do something, but in terms of decisions that we know a lot more than we think we do, especially when we're aligned.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So, Claire, I have really enjoyed our conversation and I definitely want to have you back because I could actually go on for a lot longer chatting with you about Soul
Same.
Line because clearly I'm very passionate about it. I see you're passionate
Yeah.
about it. You see that you live your life by it and kudos, like, kudos to you for, you know, doing it doing it your way and even if it's hard, showing up as you and how you want to do it and being soul aligned and starting a business, like, hats off.
Well, thank you. That's up to you as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Well,
Yeah.
Claire, is there any last thing that you want to say before we go?
I would just say to anyone who's listening to, follow your heart logically and, I like to use that, but really just be true to who you are, like she said, and find your purpose, find who you are, go from there, build a plan. Whatever you want, you can have in this life. So don't limit yourself ever.
Love it. I'm gonna zip it because I couldn't end it any better. Thank you very much, Claire, for joining us. And I look forward to our next conversation in the future.
Well, thank you again for having me, Catherine. I look forward to our next one as well.
Thanks for joining us on the AG45 Soul Aligned Strategy podcast. If you're ready to align your soul with your business, take back your time, and grow with intention, we'd love to connect. Visit accelerategrowth45.com to schedule a call, apply to be a guest, or take the next step toward building a soul-aligned business. At AG45, we believe when business meets value, wealth meets legacy, and time meets freedom, the journey becomes truly enjoyable. Until next time, stay aligned, stay inspired, and keep building your legacy.